Oh, is she? That's CAA.
Yeah.
That's like, that's the conference that Janssen. Yeah, we just played one, so it was there.
Oh, really?
We were playing, so we'll play offshore. I don't know, we were up.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the township workshop meeting. And then I'd like to ask everyone to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming out. Oh, there you go, here's John. And I should mention that Scott Wilson is in the back corner.
We're gonna need one of those straps like you have for artists. It's most of this summer, I can't find it. Good evening, everyone.
So we made it to Charlie announcements. I don't know if there's any announcements.
Do you have any announcements? All right, let's start with an open forum. Do I have anyone on the side of the room who would like to speak up to the agenda? There's nothing on this side? No. All right. So let's move ahead. We have a Zoom. Do you have any
We just have Paul Janssen, who is presenting this evening with me with the budget, with everybody else in the lobby.
All right then. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, it's been a while, guys, good to see you.
All right, I guess we can proceed. The first item would be for business, the 24 budget discussion with Paul Jensen. I'd like to see.
Can you see the budget on your screen?
Yes, we can, Paul.
Okay, so this is the document that Warren and I finished this afternoon. Just some final dust up pieces of the budget. But I want to go through it incrementally so that this is a starting position. This is certainly not your final budget.
Excuse me for 1 second. Excuse me for 1 second, Paul. Can you adjust that screen a little bit towards the audience?
You know what the board, you're not going to turn it however you'd
Is
like.
that good there? Can you see it?
I can see it.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, so this budget document you're looking at right now is the beginning. You're not required to adopt the budget until December 31st of 2023 or 24. But it gives you the framework for the discussions that you're going to have in the next 3 months or 2.5 months or however long it is that you deliberate on the presentation. So as you remember last year, this is a 5-year budget, and the way we pulled it is we like to look at the document with respect to what actually happened in 22. We like to have your 23 budget, and then we like to project the end of 23 so that we can see if what we budgeted is actual, or do we have to adjust the 24 numbers up or down based on what we see in the 23 performance. So the first point I want to draw to your attention is that we anticipated that you would have an actual balance at the end of last year of $3,486,000. However, your revenues came in and the audit adjusted the numbers so that your beginning balance on January 1st of 2023 was actually $4,451,000. So instead of having a projected budget of projected year-end of $3,486,000, you actually had $4,281,000. So you adopted a budget that had $2,261,000. Can you see my cursor on the screen?
We can.
Okay. So you adopted a budget that had $2,261,000 in revenue. You'll notice that's down substantially, but it's down because of ARPA funds. You received ARPA funds in 2021 and 2022. 2023, there were no ARPA funds. And you'll see further down, that accounted for $400,000. So that's not the full amount because you actually increased your revenue significantly even without ARPA funds. So your revenues plus your reserves were budgeted at $6,500,000, almost $500,000 higher than 2022. Your expenses, you budgeted at $2,522,000, which was about $5,000 less than you had in 2022. It's a good trend, very good trend. However, you know, as we, at the end, your balance that we anticipated would have been $4,020,000, Ultimately, what happened was, of course, year forward that we had audited, then your revenues are actually up by we're estimating almost $150,000. So $2,261,000 was projected. We're now looking at $2,449,089, and we'll go over some of those revenues. I want to tell you that, as I told you last year, I really like to budget revenues conservatively, and that's what happens when you go from a budget surplus what you think is going to be $3,400,000, actually ends up to be $4,200,000. I don't like to be liberal with estimates at year end, but realistic in terms of what we think is going to happen. If you're up a good $180,000 in revenue projected year end over what we budgeted. And of course, that means your revenues are up, your budget, your surplus plus your revenues are going to be $6,700,000. That's healthy over 2022, which was $6,013,513. Your actual expenses are projected at $2,482,000, and that's a lot less than your budget, but a lot of that has to do with deferring expenses to next year. And you can see that when we look at your 24 budget, your expenses are going to come in at $2,968,000, and you'll see where we deferred some of the projects that you wanted to do this year, but you're actually going to end up doing next year. So year-end budget, we expect to have a balance of $4,248,887. So you want to watch this column as we get to your audit, because we've thrown that column up for 1/1/24. This is your 24 budget. But we anticipate, even with the deferred expenses, that you're still going to end the year at $3,734,000, which is only $250,000 or $250,000 less than what you actually ended up in your budget for 2023. As we go down, is there any questions about that? And you can see that we're following across here. One of the reasons why you want to have this projected budget is because you can see what's happening with your revenues and your expenses and what your budget balance is going to be. And, you know, quite honestly, you're looking at a budget that's right around $2,700,000 in expenses, and you're ending the last year's budget at $3,394,000. But again, revenues are conservative, expenses are liberal, and so I think you're going to be in pretty good shape, probably pretty close to where you are this year by the time you get to the end of your 26 budget.
As far as, you know, what factor you're using for the projection, because when I'm seeing you pushing out all the way to 2027, are you assuming like rate of growth or how does that work?
You can see column K has a projection for growth. Column M, it's a projection from one year to the next. And so I click on here. This is assuming your real estate taxes are going to grow by 1.3%. Now, real estate taxes don't grow by 1.3% not because of development, but you have development. So your real estate taxes are going to go up. Your earned income taxes, you can see, has a rate of growth of 1.5%. We're anticipating 5% growth in EIP between this year and next year. Now, not everybody's going to 5% raise, but you have development. And so you have significant housing sales where probably your housing income is going to be around $250,000, which means that each of your new residents is going to pay $2,500 in EIT. Now you can see why this growth is from 1,302,000 up to 1,375,000. Does that help to explain everything?
It does, but can you explain, a lot of the property tax, we're looking at assessed value, that's pretty much locked in, right?
It's locked in except for new construction. So every time you get a new house, that house is assessed, and they pay brand new property tax, not property taxes that you get this year. You'll get some interims from them, but next year, you're gonna get full tax bills from every house that was sold and was assessed, and then you're gonna get interim tax bills for every property that comes online in 2024. So yes, you're right, the assessment is usually flat, except that you are developing. And so every one of your new homes pays a brand new property tax bill.
We have a question from the audience. Yes.
From I to J, right, that's under actual expenses. Are you showing that there's a $500,000 increase in expenses from 2023 to 2024?
As I said, they are deferring projects from 23 into 24. So they have allocated ARPA funds to be used for some of the projects. They have agreed that they want to do additional construction on certain projects. We're going to go through that as we go through the budget. But that is really deferred projects from this year to next year.
Do we have the detail on what those projects are?
He just said he's gonna talk about it.
Yes.
Paul, I'm sorry, we did interrupt your flow here, but there was a big question coming out of that. We'll just go ahead and circle back on that.
Sure, no problem. So, when you say circle back, we'll address it as we
Okay.
Right? Okay. So, we budgeted, now we're into your actuals, your budget versus your projected, your end. A lot of it's pretty consistent, but here's what we're talking about. Your transfer tax, we budgeted 150,000. We're estimating year-end 200. It wouldn't surprise me if that actually comes in at 225,000. But we don't know that because it's only based on the properties that are sold in the month of September, October, and November, and paid in the month of December. I think you're on a accrual basis, so you may even have your January transfer tax posted back to your December revenues. But I want to be conservative. I don't want to go crazy and say you're going to make 300,000 or you're going to make 225 and then you're only going to make 210. So we're being conservative at 200,000. And again, I would estimate that you're going to have probably 200 to 225,000 next year. But if the real estate market collapses and you don't sell anything, this is going to be the number that you've received in the last couple of years based on people who have property that are selling the township, not new construction selling. Does that make sense? Okay. So now, the next thing is your earned income tax. So in 2022, your earned income tax was actually collected at $1,194,000. We budgeted $1,200,000. We estimate the earned income tax is going to be at $1,250,000. That's $60,000 more, $55,000 more. I think, what, is that even higher than $1,250? But I don't want to go crazy over that because we really don't know, based on not having a quarter's worth of collection, what that number is going to be. We're estimating an increase of $60,000, and that's consistent with what you had in early Q, increasing to 23. And this $1,310,000 is based on two factors. One, we're in inflation, so people are getting increased wages, not necessarily $60,000 worth of wages, but as I said, probably every single property that is bought in Honeybrook right now, the new construction, probably people are paying between $2,000 and $2,500 in earned income tax. And so that's why it's going to go up another $60,000. And again, $1,310,000 is our estimate. It may be as much as $1,350,000, $1,340,000. I don't want to estimate that. Like I said, I like to be conservative on your revenues and be really clear about your expenses. And you can see that when you slow that down, your development is going to slow down over the next 4 years. So you can see that we have 1.5 from 25 to 26, but now we're going down to 1.02 from 26 to 27, recognizing that you're not going to have as much development as you get out there unless you have new projects come in. And so we've got to slow down the growth of your in your projections. This is really nothing part of your budget for your licensing and permit. So like your cable franchise fee, that's interesting because typically cable franchise fees are going down, but because you have new properties coming online, those properties, some of them do then pay for cable, and your revenues go up. And your revenues were 45,000 last year, we're estimating 46 this year, 47, and then we're flattening it out. So not having additional people paying the cable, number one, and then not as many people signing up for full cable. Fines and forfeits, you're not a lot of, this is your first big thing right here. Interest earnings. So in 2022, your total interest earnings were $2,000. Your manager came in, put in an aggressive investment program. We budgeted $70,000, but we're projecting that you're going to be at $150,000 in revenue. Just let that sink in. $150,000 of revenue that has nothing to do with taxes, fees, permits. It's simply investing your balance in your general fund and creating $150,000 of extra revenue. Your entire property tax rate is $135,000. So you can see that you can be investing up, but we think that rate is going to go down over time. It's just that I don't think it's going to go down to where it was, which was 1 or 2%. As we move forward, we can always lower this number and make it less. So that's where we are. Here's your ARPA funds. So this was $434,903 received in 2022. You're not receiving it anymore. It's gone. It's done. So it goes up in your project balance, in your fund balance, but you don't have any more revenue to show for it. All right, I'll pause here. Does anybody have any questions?
Good.
I got a question.
You got a question?
What's the money invested in that doubled? It doubled from 70 to 150?
It's a Pliget fund. That's Pennsylvania, specific funds from municipalities.
So back in 2022, the average investment by a bank, which is where your money was returning maybe 0.4%. Because of the program that your manager put in place, your easy money, which is like money market, where you can put it in and take it out, your easy money is returning 4.5%. If you're investing it for what's called play term, it's getting upwards of 5.4%. So just imagine all those dollars with 0.5% or 0.4% interest now getting you 4.5%, 5.5% interest. And that's all based on your fund balance. So all those dollars that you have sitting in the account, Warren can decide to do a cash flow of when you need the money and when you have the excess money, and he can term out the investment period, which gets you to the 5.5% versus having a money market of 4.5%. All of you know, if you call your bank and you're asking them what they're giving you for a money market, unless you're investing it in something long term, you're probably getting 1, maybe 0.75%. But when you're talking about municipal dollars and in the investment program that Warren's done, it gives you a lot of money. And it's money that you don't have to tax for and you don't have to raise fees for.
Question on that. So how much was generated from the land preservation fund?
You'll see that.
Here we have all that.
We have all that
That'll come up later? All right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is just the general fund.
Okay, we're in general. All right.
Yeah, this is the general fund.
Yeah, all of your funds are broken out, so we'll be seeing everything. So,
John, can I ask a question?
Yes, Rich.
Sorry, this first gives from 17 Matthew John. Are those interests, is that being reinvested, or are we actually using that and applying it to the general fund? Or are they being reinvested to dividends?
They are reinvested currently.
Yeah, what's the criteria for divesting those? Is there a certain period of time, or can that be actually used to generate towards the budget? Otherwise, it's just paper money, correct?
No, it's real money.
It's real money.
It's real cash, it's real reserves. And so Warren develops a cash flow analysis, and he knows that in February, that's when he has the least amount of money, because he doesn't have any general fund property taxes. He's in between his EIT, so that's his lowest cash flow. But when you're talking in terms of, go back up here, when you're talking in terms of cash reserves of $4 million, you can just take that money, roll it over, and more money. And that's what he's doing. That's why your interest is going from $1,000 in '22 to $150,000 this year. I would estimate this number is conservative, but like I said, we know this number. I want to be conservative. If our investment interest revenue goes down, let's say 3% mid-year, which everybody wants to see, because we're going to be slowing down inflation and loosening up the economy, and this number is not unreasonable. 125 is not unreasonable. That help you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. This is all state shared revenue. You have, your biggest one is foreign fire, which then transfer to your fire company and then use it for equipment. You have an allocation of $21,000 for municipal pension funds that the state issued. The rest of it is all just very small money. So it's not a lot to talk about. I said, if we were down here, the building permits was the first budget that we missed. So you were budgeted at 90. It looks like you're going to, I'm sorry, we did this. It looks like you're going to get $120,000 in revenue. So next year we're rolling it back to 100,000. Hopefully you'll get 120 in the next year. And you know, quite honestly, if your housing market is off, it could be $100,000. But this is pass-through money next time for the services that are done on the building permit. Where you get your money is when that money translates to the property tax in your IT. You can see that your permit, electrical permits you're on time with. So most of your permits are hitting right off market. Your building permits were up though. So that's a positive thing. So your landfill host fees went up. They went up above what we projected, $207,000, they're $210,000. And we're estimating based on the agreement what those fees are going to do. Again, that's like your property tax money that's free. You're hosting a landfill. That's great revenue that you have, and it's revenue into the future. All right, so fire hydrant rentals, you have each $8,000 back from your private development. They actually have to pay for their fire hydrants flushing. As you don't know, every year the water company comes out and flushes your fire hydrants. They sit stagnant. And so what happens is the pipes hold the fluid that's in there. They also have to exercise the valves so that if your house is on fire and they come out to fight the fire from a hydrant, that the valves aren't locked shut. So that happens twice a year, and that's the revenue you get from your private one. But as we go down, there's also a cost to it. But this is the revenue you get from your private one. I guess this is how high makes a payment in lieu of taxes. So on a pilot, that's a great thing for getting that from them. Doesn't relate at all to property taxes, but there's a payment coming in from it. So this is where we got the revenues from before. We estimated by $1,261,000. We're actually collecting $2,449,000, and we're projecting next year at $2,454,000. Again, it's going to be significantly higher, but I don't want to run down the line and show revenues that maybe won't come in because of economic conditions or whatever. So that's your revenue picture, and you can see that it grows a little bit each year. It slows down as you get to the end because your development isn't happening, and you're not getting within the IT, you're not monthly growth in property tax. That's where you are. Okay, so this is your first budget. You have a firm that does your bookkeeping, and it's in 2022 it was $65,000. We estimated $72,000, but it's actually coming in at $50,000. So Warren is going to look at number and make sure that it's the correct projection. And if it is, we're gonna see whether these next few numbers can be reduced because of how your bookkeeping services are being provided and what causing that fee to be reduced. It's a nice reduction. It's almost 35%, so 33%. These are all consistent. I guess we budgeted 9,900, half the key in at 10,200. You can see that we're adding 10% again. On to your point, maybe it's not 10%, because certainly you can see that if you change this number, just watch the cell right here. So if you change the number 0.08, the cell goes down to 11,000, 15,000. So it's whatever you're comfortable with, it can just be adjusted accordingly. Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, that's,
Yep. It makes it pretty easy to see what you're doing with your budget. And when you have a decision, like you want to hire a public works employee, you can plug that number into your budget, and you can see what it does to your finance. One of the things that you have in your budget, your extra personnel, so you hire for your public works department. Okay, so your tax collections, we gotta find out what's happening here. It looks like your expenses are gonna be down here. We're just trying to confirm why it's down $4,000. You gained your projections for the year coming up. It looks like your actual cost collection is gonna be down a little bit. You definitely have savings in your legal services. Because Warren is down there and he's there full time and he's able to manage a lot of legal expenses, but you had $8,000 expense in 2022. So if you did $60,000, you're going at $47,000. That's pretty grand. Reimbursable expenses, you had a revenue source that offset. We got that end at $3,200, $1,200 minor, but you also have an offsetting revenue on top of that. And then your special legal is down, budgeted $4,000, came in $2,500. You see that we increased $4 and we kept it $3. That may go down, we know where we are there. Payroll for administration is going up. We have that projected $120,000, that is under new staff program. And then next year, this is the new staff program budgeted for the entire year. And so you're at $158,000. Once we get through that budget, you has a standard growth pattern. So the salary 120, we have it growing 128.3, 131. You can see that 1.3, 1.4% there. It's the standard growth. You decide what you want to do and how it goes. You can adjust it accordingly. On the final number, we're providing that number there. And then
on your projection, I mean, it's going up considerably. I mean, what we projected last year, let's see what those numbers are. So by 2027, at 129, and where are we at now in 2027?
129.
Yeah, it's quite a jump.
10,000 over 140,000 is, what is that? That's like.
Well, see, to the point is that we're in a financial favorable situation right now, but we're also in a region right now where we try to work with our other municipalities. What we're doing is driving up the cost of salaries and services here, and I'm hearing that from the other municipalities. And we're not treasurer, we're not mainline community. That's something we have to factor in. We know that we're looking at market value to attract qualified people, but we're not on the same scale as some of these other municipalities.
Well, I hear what you're saying, John. I think that this number is not out of line with the municipalities that are driving the budget like your budget. It's not out of line. If you're looking at, let's say, I'm trying to think of West,
Was Brandywine or one of those municipalities?
No, West Brandywine is much higher than this. So if you move east in the county, you're looking at $160,000, $170,000, $200,000 for damages. I agree that if you're looking at your municipality south of you, I kind of think of the name of the West
Battlefield?
West what?
West Whiteland?
No,
Battlefield?
West Whiteland is.
Okay, so the point is, yes, I hear what you're saying, but yeah, this is some of the feedback that I'm getting from some of the municipalities in our region. So I made the point, let's just keep going, we've got a lot to cover.
Okay. I just think you ought to look at the municipalities that provide the services that you do, that have that can do aggressive things like investing your money. And, you know, if you look back at where you are now on your investments, your manager's salary has been taken care of just by the work that he's doing in that area. But I'm not trying to justify that. I'm saying to you that I believe that if you look at municipalities that are similar to Honeybrook, you're going to find that and we talked about this last year, you now have a salary that you don't have to worry about. If something happens to Warren, you don't have to worry about a $20,000 or $30,000 increase like you had a year, or you have a manager. Have the money in your bank. You can then acquire a creative manager like Warren is, serve your budget correctly. I think you ought to look at something.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, because we do have a lot to cover, so.
As we go forward, because of this is inflated by contribution you're making to one of your local organizations, goes down significantly at 25. You have a fairly large increase in your computer services, which I think is well invested with where we are with cybersecurity and what we're providing. All the dollars that you have in the bank and invested. So I think it's really upgrading your support for your computer services. And I can share into a 2-year design process for your website, and then it back off to speed to your website. Act 537, I guess you have your engineering reimbursement. This is, we did 40,000, you only have 22,000 coming in. Your Act 537 was delayed for a year, so this will be done this year, it's being pushed back to 2024, and then it'll go to a maintenance fee of 1,000 back, 5 for 8, 26 up, back that way. You have MS4 compliance, and we're just estimating that that's going to be a $9,500 number in order to maintain compliance in the program. This is just your basic maintenance of the pulling that you have, and not a lot of change here. Your biggest increase is your utilities and maintenance supplies, which I've bought at $1,500, and that represents pretty much what you have as far as an increase. So we're all, this is your hydrant rentals. So this is the fire hydrant you own as the township. Water lines you go on, hydrants you own as the township. You're paying $15,000 for the rental for those, and then you have a $10,000 fee you're paying the reimbursement for your hydrant rentals there. So, this is one of the major increases that you have in your budget, causing an increase in your expenses, and that is that you're going to consider purchasing a vehicle for your fire and paying $48,500 for that. So you can see that a $48,500 increase in your expenses this year, and then it reduces back down to your normal contributions to your EMS and to your fire company. Do you have any questions about? Let's see the per year expected increase. Foreign fire tax, we talked about that earlier, it matches, you get money in it. Probably the word is write the check right now, and you're gonna approve it in your October bill if you haven't already done. So your total in your fire and EMS is going from 188 fully to 256, then back another 113, and then it was $93,000 based on you taking out all these additional contributions that you're making to your fire and to your EMS operations. Fleet permits, you know, we're estimating 85,000, it actually came in at 125, that matches your permit fees up above. County permit, so we're estimating that's going to be 130, and then you start to drop off as your development goes off, and you go back to a fairly standard building program that you have, you know, additions to your houses and zoning permits for sheds and signs and stuff like that. So we're into your planning and zoning department, and so you're going from 66,000 budgeted to 59,000. Next year, we're estimating that your cost is only going to be 50,000, and it's going to be below this year's budget for the next 4 years on the estimate we have of your expenses that you have in those line items. The zoning hearing board, you had a very active year in the zoning hearing board. We're providing funds there, hoping something anywhere near as active as probably returns back to the 2022 year. Animal control, keeping that budget consistent. Sanitation, you know, a minor increase, and we did hold it for additional pieces to go forward. Public Works Director, and this is another change in your next, in that you're hiring or you're promoting an assistant Public Works Director, and then replacing that person on the staff with another Public Works person. So that's where your staffing goes. So you're at a total of $320,000, and with your assistant director, you're now at $240,000. Not inconsistent with the kind of you have in your staff based on the demand that you have. But you can see that the percentages are included here, and so to you know where you are with the increases you get that number very easily where you are. We're estimating a 10% increase in your workers' comp. That's a great number for workers' comp. If you don't have any major losses, as we get into next year, we can reduce it. You can see we budgeted 10,000, and we'll take that 18,000. Is that good? When Warren gets your quote for 2024, we can amend this number, but I would still suggest that you keep your 10% increase as you go across. Same thing with healthcare. We budgeted 126. I think you had a new healthcare provider come in, quote-wise, and it saved you $16,000. So we're estimating 120,000 next year, and then we have the escalators. It's really good to do a 5-year budget if you don't make a reasonable escalating projections. But it could be that you have the same thing happen this year we had in future years where you had 114,000, we estimate 126, and actually comes in 110, which is less than your 2022 expense. So just provide for that growth, and what I'm saying, I like to be very, I like to be a little more liberal on your expenses and a little more conservative on your revenues. And that provides for a better process for you to arrive at your budget process. So we're estimating that you were at 496 in 22, your budget is 518, you're actually going to come in at 522, and then we're projecting 548 next year as we follow across with these increases. They're not in stone by any means, but we're trying to make sure that we provide for them. 42,500 last year, we provided for a sizable increase in your diesel fuel. It didn't resolve itself. You're only $3,000, $3,200 over last year's budget in terms of projections. But again, we're trying to make sure that you don't fall short on that. You see that the numbers stay fairly consistent, but they are increased each year. We can just reduce them as we get into our experiences and see what we're actually going to expend. So this is a great one. You'll remember there wasn't a whole lot of snow. There was some ice last year. But you had budgeted 20,000, you only spent 2,500, so that's a big savings. You can see that we put 20,000 back in there again. You certainly don't want to cut that budget because on a year we have to spend $30,000 in expenses, and if you budgeted $5,000, that can be a major hit on your budget. So we put 20 in there, and hopefully next year you have another 2,500 here. Down that way with what I'm hearing for expenses, the forecast of the winter, but that's where we are. And Warren, we're going to find out the liquid fuel budget that your salt bins are full, so you have a little bit of a lead time on that. So this is just a little bit of this is where you pay for some of your extra expenses that aren't related to just the salt purchases. This is an innocuous budget. I'm not sure how many actual traffic signals you have, but you do have speed limit signs on it. These are 4 out of the general fund. Your storm sewers, but $2,000 project, you only spend 80 on that. We put 100,000 forward to next year, with 100,000 each year after that. To cover your storm sewers and your drains. And that's just basically maintenance. That you may have some things where you're actually trying to reconstruct, but it's providing you with a budget that you can for those expenses. This is a big one. This is your repairs by outside services. You had a backhoe that dropped an engine because of a gear drop in the transmission. And I think to approve that bill as encumbered, you can see that you don't have to worry about when you get to the end of the year. That bill is included in your budget and the projected year-end number. I think it was $33,000 or something. So we looked at where the projected year-end number. So you don't have to worry about whether that $35,000 shows up in your budget. You're going to be short on, or you're going to be over on expenses like that. It's actually being projected in your budget. But again, we brought it back in line with future normal maintenance budgets. Roads and bridges, this is a, I guess you had a road project this year that you were anticipating 100,000. You only did $15,000, with 200 in for next year, and then each year after that, 200,000 to add to liquid fuels to do your paving and road maintenance projects. That's built into your budget. Equipment rental, pretty consistent. 4,000, we're projecting 4,000 is what your public works department rents to do the work that they need to do. We have your cemetery budget here. You don't have anything in recreation programming. You spent 9,000 in 22, but you have spent nothing in 23, and not projecting a future budget in that area. Parks maintenance repairs, the supplies. But in 22 for 8,500, last year we budgeted 3,000, came in at $1,200. You had services and charges of 20,000, actually came in at $9,000, and utilities was 3 that came in at 2. So this is a fairly significant reduction in the expenses that you have in park maintenance. And we're going to need to revisit as we go into your park fund, your recreation fund. But this is how you take, this is where you can carry your parks. And the concern is that you have enough money here to actually maintain your parks as you go forward. Your library contribution, you typically give them $20,000, but Warren has indicated that the county is asking for an increase of $44,000. Again, that's in your budget. It's being added to your annual amount, so you don't have to worry about whether you have 44,000 built into 24 or 25, they're there. Your capital contribution is being overtaken by this 44,000. So while you budgeted 93,000, you're actually going to make a $3,000 commitment to local capital construction based on paying Technicon for the reviews of plans, but then that 44,000 is going to overcome over the years. It's going to make up for the $93,000 capital construction, or capital contribution. Does everybody recall how that decision was made, or am I saying something you're not aware of?
We could do that explanation now.
So,
Okay, so Warren, do you want to go through it, or me to?
sure, so, the library had asked for ARPA funds initially 2 years ago, and then last year they got the $1.2 billion state funding. So we agreed to leave that $93,000, which was going to be the match that we were going to file to offset any work the township does reviewing the plans for their land development for their expansion. It looks like we're only gonna be doing $3,000 worth of reimbursement. The Chester County Library has a study of how much the township should be giving for populace to the library, so that's why it's going for $20,000 to $44,000, because we should be giving twice as much per person in the township. So we went to actually get our library contribution in line with the population that we have, and then just running off the capital contribution, because most of their land development is going to be done next year. So by doubling what we give them every single year going forward, we don't need to really worry about funding the capital purchase, because it's going to kind of level it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Paul.
The next line item is your principal and interest, and you can see that it pays fairly consistent, because your interest is, your principal goes down, your interest goes up, and you end up with roughly $255,000 payment every year. And that goes until you retire your debt. This is your pension plan, this is for your non-uniform employees, and your workers' comp administration. That's what you pay every year, very consistent. Insurances, we budgeted 42, actually came in 43,997. And again, like I said, I'd like to add additional percentages in there. I think you're going to see that your number is going to come down a little bit next year, because that's what the commercial insurance market is doing right now, but we're trying to provide for enough money. This number could change before you adopt your budget, because Warren will get a quote of what that insurance actually is. We're just providing an estimate for it right now. So these are the transfers that you make from your general fund. Warren, why don't you go through those, each of those, you know, aggregate.
Sure. So, 302 is we transfer to the capital reserve fund. What we do is we take all of the equipment, the large expenses, and we have a depreciation schedule based upon the replacement of each of the individual vehicles. So we write off that loss, so that kind of goes into the capital reserve to future fund those purchases. So we're writing off the depreciation. The $60,000 is going to the capital fund also for future upgrades, repairs to the township administration building and the public works department. So we're getting to that age. We'd like to pre-save some money in the capital reserve if we need a new roof. The capital funds budget already has enough funds in it, so we don't have to start transferring large volumes of money. 492-400 transfer to the rec fund. Again, we had started that last year at $60,000. That was going to, again, pre-fund the rec fund, so when we need new equipment or resurfacing or some type of larger capital repair, that we would already have funds coming from the rec fund. Because again, I think all funds should be appropriately displayed so we know where the monies are coming from. So that's $60,000, and you'll see that coming up in the rec fund. That's just the pre-save for budgets like a resurfacing, or if we need to replace a top lot or something like that, we would already have funds set aside so we can do capital projects out of there. 492-551 transfer to EMS for 120. Again, that was something that we gave from as a donation because we had received the ARPA funds. We did that last year. They elected to not take the funds, and we moved it forward to this year. They look like they're not going to take the funds this year. So instead of reallocating it every single year to the general fund, it makes sense that we're just going to do a transfer into the EMS fund, which is a fund just used to fund our EMS providers, and then if they elect not to take it, it just falls into that fund balance. So when a request comes for that money, it's just a simple request to pull it from there, so we don't have to continue to show a line item for an expense that for 2, 3, 4 years we essentially zero out. So that just makes better sense to accurately reflect what we're doing. And again, 436-610, we have been doing some of the capital reserve projects for stormwater out of the general funds. As Paul mentioned, those are for the larger projects that we're doing, not just the repair and maintenance, it's actually like redoing piping like we did on Sipley Road. So those expenses should be coming out of capital, so what we're just doing is we're taking that $100,000 for 2 years. And again, it's just putting into the capital reserve, so we're adequately funding those funds so that when we make those future requests, we're not seeing a large fund balance in the general fund and just moving thousands of dollars into the other funds where they're gonna ultimately be expended. So we're just pre-funding the capital reserve, so as those projects come in, we don't have to start tanking the general funds. And I think that's what I got there, Paul, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I had mentioned, we have, where we are with the tier is projecting a $32,000 deficit. I think by the time we get to the end of the year, your audit statement, you're going to turn around and be the same kind of surplus you had this year, which is probably going to end up with an extra $70,000, maybe $100,000, not a deficit of $32,000. Next year, because of the deferring of the project, this is going to be a deficit, but your fund balance, let me go up to the top real quick. You can watch what happened to your fund balance. It went from $3,486,000 to $4,248,000 because we didn't actually do the projects. So the resident says, oh my God, why is your fund balance going down to $3,007,000? We have to look back 2 years how it grew. So actually, over the 2-year period, we're projecting an increase in your fund balance of $500,000. But when you say you're going to do a project and then you decide to defer it, that's what happens with your fund balance. So you have to remember as you go forward that you went from $3,486,000 to $3,734,000 over that 2-year period because of the sliding of those expenses that could have occurred here, where we would have kept your fund balance probably right around $3,600,000, and then you would have been at $3 million out of next year. So that's just important, and that's one of the other reasons why I like to show the progression of your budget, because you can follow what happened, why your fund balance goes up and then goes back down, because you can then see where your revenues and your expenses are. And you can see they're pretty consistent, except for the deferred expenses. Okay, so that takes care of your general fund. Now we get into the specialty funds. So that goes to some of the questions you raised earlier. So here's your fire protection fund. You have a balance of, Warren says you like to transfer the money that you can pretty consistently each year, but right now you have a balance beginning the year of $35,000 up from 21. You're up $14,000. For protecting revenues at 211, so that means your actual budget is 247,000, but you're actually going to spend 194,000. That leaves you with $53,000. Now you can see that over time that's going to go up, which is going to allow you to contribute to equipment when it's needed, like your fire defuse vehicle. So he's coming out of the internal fund, but that allows you to be able to see where your funding is so that you can provide for additional support for your fire company when it's needed. EMS fund, And just a little bit of a sideline. We're located in Bucks County, the center of excellence of local government. But Albertson is one of the ambulance companies that is doing a lot of work in Bucks County. And I think you want to put your ear to the table and kind of listen to what's happening in your ambulance areas also, because there is a statewide crisis here. And funding ambulance companies is going to be something that's going to hit you right in the face, because they're not getting increased Medicare expenses, Medicare revenues. Everybody knows Medicare is flat, and their expenses are going up. And I know that's from Albertson, because they're part of the Berks County reporting area, because they serve Carnarvon Township, which is in Berks County, and New Morgan, I think, and parts of Ruskin Manor. But just be aware that there is a crisis. It was actually in the PSATS newsletter this month. There's a crisis in EMS coming, and it's going to require a lot more funding from municipalities, or you're not going to have an ambulance come on your 911 call for maybe 30, 45 minutes. I don't know what your response time is today in Honeybrook, but what's going to happen is there's going to be less companies serving more territory. It's going to take longer for ambulance to get there. So, this is your EMS budget, and like we said, we are showing all of the revenues, we're showing all of the expenses. You'll see down here, that you have a $120,000 transfer that you're doing this year, which then hits your fund balance that you actually expended back out. And as Warren said, you have the money there to make the transfer when they're ready for it. And so your fund balance is up significantly, 18,000, 22 budget, 27, now it's 147, and they're gonna ask for that money. And it's just a matter of when they do, and now you know you have some money in the fund balance for it, and it grows a little bit each year. You can help them also with their capital requests for invoices and so on. Questions about that? That's it that you paid extra money last year, moved this year, and now you're just gonna clear the account out from your general fund, and then it'll become part of your fund balance as you go forward. Capital reserve, we'll have this year's projected rate done, because we want to see where we are in terms of the projects that are going to get done. Again, you had $200,000 in your capital reserve. We budgeted $3,600, but because you get out of the program, after that, I have $39,200 in additional revenue there. We know that. So now it's just a matter of figuring out what projects we're going to do at the end of this year, and then setting the projects you want for next year. We have already detailed in here, and I'll go over them as we get there. There's some public works equipment. We have a skid steer snow blower, $15,000, and then you have another F600, which is your big plow truck that does your big highways with, where we're facing snow and so on. That's in your budget for 2024. And then, I think that we have an expense of $204,000 that is budgeted for the capital reserve. We just have to go forward with what projects you may have as supervisors, but we want to add into this and then see where your fund balance goes to. You go down a little bit next year, but then it goes down at 25 also, that starts to recover and recovers well as we go forward. But again, that's based on what projects you want to have done and what those costs are. That we have the next 3 months to determine. All right. Fire capital, this is, I guess, where you're gathering money to be able to support the fire company. Warren, do you want to give an explanation of how we're doing this now?
Sure, so part of the millage that we do goes into the fire funds, partially from that budget that was a couple lines up. That goes for their operating costs for the year, and then we transfer $80,000 a year into the capital reserve. And you can see in projected 2025, they're going to request that $320,000 to pay for their pumper truck. So essentially, we pre-fund $80,000 a year, and every 3 to 5 years when they replace a piece of equipment, they do that pool to pay for ladder trucks, tanker trucks, pumpers, stuff like that. So we just kind of take part of our millage rate, some for their operating costs, which comes out of the general fire, and then the remainder that we agreed upon with the fire company goes to pay into the fire.
And congratulations for having that built into your budget, because most municipalities then look at a $320,000 number and they raise their millage to match that up, and then they have to lower the millage the following year, or they won't segregate money to their fund balance. They're not really looking at where their funds are. And here you have your funds actually identified for the fire capital fund. So that tremendous forward thinking there. So this was one of the questions you had. What's happening with land credit? So this is a complicated fund this year, guys, because Warren advised me that you wanted to unwind the two $400,000 contributions that you made to land grants last year and what was budgeted for this year. I guess it was 21 and 22. And so you can see that there's a $157,000 expense this year because you're going to transfer the money back into, you're going to have the money come back into the land res budget. But we went from $4 million to $4.2 to $5.2. to 7 years. So this is where the money is actually coming back into the account, and then it's going to grow regularly. We had to put the $800,000 back in, so you're having your fund balance, and you have that. And you were asking about interest earnings. So I had $1,000 in 22, my period is 15. Actually going to come in at $143,000. So when you look at this, you can see that 143, estimated 140, probably going to get a lot more than that. It's going to draw down, but you can see that you are putting in an extra $500,000+ of free money over the next 5 years because of your fund balance there. Warren estimates that you will need this fund for a number more years before you hit all of the easement revenues that you need to buy your easements to stop development. So we have that projected in there. And then this is where your 800,000 comes up from rec fund to reimburse the land trust fund. That's where your balance each as you go through the 16 years. This is you have a processing cost. You've allocated for that. You have a land trust up. You're going to do next year with 13.5 estimated, and then you have your commission you pay your tax bill, which is your total cost projected for 2024 is $85,500. So here's your expense that went out, and then this comes back in as a public money in 2025 or 2024. Sorry. So that takes care of your land price fund.
I just question on that. So, as far as the collection, I just heard that to target the remaining farms, but what is do we have a targeted number and say that, in order to meet that X amount of farms remaining, how much would that cost us? And then that would give us a decision. Do we slow down the collection of tax right now? And can that still meet that projection? I don't see that number available.
Land Trust has that number of what the cost will be. And if not, that's going to be in the
Well, yeah, we need to see that. We keep hearing that, but I've been a part of that for years, and we don't have that number. That's my concern.
So the update that we're going to do next year
Yeah.
to redo the land preservation program is going to have that number in that document.
Yeah.
And now again, from what I was told, we're still talking 20s of millions of dollars. Talking 20.
Anywhere in the range of 10 to 15,000 would be a realistic projection for what we need. And obviously, we can hit those numbers easily with the current.
Correct, and that's showing 11 million at 2027. We're going to have our numbers by next year. And that should then give the board direction of whether we need to keep the tax as it is, because to lower it, we're going to have to do a referendum, which means it could also fail and go to zero. So the board will have to make a decision that when we hit X number, that's when we do the referendum to cut off the tax.
We never, until recently, we heard us say about reducing it to zero. And I have talked to Keystone and other people over the years, and they said that the township can reduce the amount of dedicated earned income tax towards that program. They can't increase it. If we wanted to increase it, we'd have to go back to the taxpayers.
Yep.
All right. So we just have to be clear going forward on that, because yes, we're seeing it in these numbers grow, and the amount of easement applications is slowing. But then again, is that an indication of a slowing because of the pandemic? We'll be able to assess that in a year or two.
So we have 4 applications in now.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that payout's going to be yet. So that's going to change our numbers for this year. We're not going to know until the county issues us those numbers come up. So we do have 4 applications.
Yeah.
And again, the board approved last month the Natural Lands Trust purchase of the woodlands. So
If I'm correct, most of the large purchases, the large farms that we targeted have been covered, though some of these are related to small farms. So that's one of the things we have to take into consideration. The total amount of acreage that has the potential for conservation easement. And if it still qualifies within the parameters that we set, we're not just taking applications as they come in. We have to be meeting the criteria that we've established. Otherwise, we get back to our program document and adjust it and say that anything goes. So that has to be addressed. All right. Sorry, Paul, I went off on that explanation on the land preservation, but the projection, what you put here, what you worked with Warren is what we've needed for years. And then now we have these numbers in front of us.
Well, so you also did 400,000 for actually purchasing land pres acreage, and you didn't do it. So I was hearing Warren say you might have a number in November, which we could put in here.
Yeah.
And it works out to help you to look at your fund balances as you go forward, and then estimating how many more dollars you need based on the 2024 plan that's going to be developed. Then you could really start looking at where is the end game for land grants for Eagle Junction.
All right.
Okay? All right, so your next one you're dealing with is recreation. This is a significant issue. And in red, because this is where the money is coming out of, coming back to land grants. And so what's happening is with your current budget, you're looking at $286,000 deficit to do the projects that you want to build. And so you have a land pres transfer of 800,000 that replaces the 800,000 that was collected. You also have a $561,000 aggregate budget, which is made of two different projects that you had from last year and this year. You do have an extra $125,000 coming from the state, which you can ask for reimbursement. That's why we have it as revenue in 2025. We're not going to do the project, but it is going to result in a deficit in your recreation fund of $286,000. Now, that's not it all. I mean, Warren and I were talking today. You could lend the recreation fund $300,000 from your fund balance in the general fund, and then you could eliminate $61,000 and use that $61,000 to reduce the $300,000 lend that you do to cover this deficit. You can also raise taxes if you want to raise $280,000. But I'm just saying to you, given the projects that you have on the table right now, you're going to end up with almost a $300,000 deficit because of those projects. And we just have to figure out how to fund it. It could be you want to go to a bank loan and then pay the bank loan back. I don't know. My concern for you is you're generating $61,000 here from the general fund to do park maintenance, which goes in and put it down in your budget, but you're actually funding your park maintenance out of the general fund. So the $61,000 isn't necessarily needed, but you're also expanding your facilities significantly. So maybe you do need the extra $60,000 for maintenance. It's just, somehow we've got to figure out, and this doesn't have to be done tonight. Sometime between now and when we actually pass the budget, we've got to identify how the $300,000 is going to be overcome. And it doesn't have to be in the budget document. It could be that you have a understanding by the supervisors how you're going to fund it, but you know what your deficit is, so you can fund it, or you decide whether you're going to do the projects to begin with or how you're going to do it. So that's the challenge in front of you.
So, Paul,
Anybody have any questions about that?
We have a question came up.
so are you saying that 500, going back to that original statement you had about there's another $500,000 of expenses projected for 2024, is it because of those two projects for the Parks and Rec? Is that what you were saying?
That would be the skate park and the resurfacing of the tennis court and the basketball.
So it's $500,000?
For both of those projects, yes.
Oh,
Correct. So we're estimating about 250 from the skate park, of which the DCNR will reimburse half, so that's what the 125 is coming into. So then, again, we're looking at the 125 that's not reimbursed from DCNR, and the quote to resurface the courts up there, about $330,000. Now, again, the board doesn't have to approve the resurfacing, and the board doesn't have to approve the skate park. I think we're far enough along and had enough discussions over my tenure that we agreed to do that skate park. But again, it's up to the board's decision whether we just want to remove the $60,000 a year, because again, that was just pre-saving for if we need to redo a top lot. Or, as Paul said, we can just elect to take it, transfer it out of the general fund this year and put it into rec and elect to not pay it back or pay it back over the course of 5 years by not making $60,000. We have a healthy fund balance.
The coordinates of this $1,361,690,000, of expenses, $800 is repaying land rent.
All right, thank you, Paul.
Okay. And your final budget is the liquid fuels budget. And you have a fund balance in the liquid fuels budget, you have almost $500,000. So, this is, you did 501, revenues of 308, total 809, expenses of 373 for a fund balance of 436. Your expenses, you didn't do some projects, so your fund balance has grown to 667. And of course, you can see that it's going to go down over a couple of years because you are still scheduling to move some of the projects out. As we look at again, revenue from interest, 325, budgeted 1,000, net $23,000. So when you think about your road work you're doing, again, you're looking at 23, 43, 59, 71, $81,000 of money that you're going to be generating because of your fund balance to do road construction. $100,000 to get a mile of road. So that's a significant number. But we're showing what your liquid fuels budget is. I'm concerned. I think electric cars, remember that your liquid fuels budget is based on paying at the fuel pump for taxes. The state is trying to figure out how to tax electric vehicles, but what we're seeing is a concern that as more electric vehicles come online, less fuel tax is being paid, and is the tax that they're going to charge the electric car owners for the use of the road going to reflect accurately what the cost of that is. I'm even more concerned that I think we're going to see tractor trailers with, 40 tons of payload that are being run by major electric tractors, and they're not paying for 300 gallons worth of liquid fuel tax. So I'm concerned, we're being very conservative about where we see that going, but I think you're going to see this number start to diminish probably in 2 years, and God knows where it's going to go.
Yeah, one of the approaches that you would be paying on your income tax, that would be one way. If you have an EV, there would be a tax assessed. So it's being addressed in Harrisburg and across the country, but yes, it's in PSATs and other conversations. Yeah, good point.
PennDOT's kind of looking at a $290 registration fee.
Yeah.
I think if you don't drive a lot, that's probably accurate. If you drive a lot, I think it's ridiculous. It's not even going to be close. And I don't know how they're going to assess tractor trailers because Pennsylvania is such a huge drive-through state coming out of New England into the Midwest and the Southeast. And those trucks aren't going to pay a damn thing to Pennsylvania. They're going to pay where they're registered. And I just think it's a huge problem for us to deal with. Okay, so we have, you can see here that we built in your actual construction projects as you move forward. Here's your road program. So in 2024, we're allocating $240,000 each year for the next 3 years, and then $120,000 in 2027. And it matches up with the general fund power that we talked about, so that you can actually do your road projects. So I guess this is where you actually pay for your result. And so we had 40,000, you actually 19,000, but I believe your salt bins are full. If you have a really high river, you might spend $40,000, but if your bins are full, you might only spend $20,000 on really bad work. 40 is what typically we spend. I think you're in pretty good shape for the portion of your budget. And you are spending a good amount of money on your oil and tip program this year, and he budgeted back at $120 $120,000 to move forward. That's the end of your budget. As I said, this is work in progress. This is not the budget you're going to adopt. Could be, but you have time to review this, question it, come to consensus, figure out where you want these numbers to be. And the great part about this is, anything you do for 2024, you can project forward and see where your budget is in 2027. And you can see that, I'm going to go back up your work budget, because that's critical. You can see what happens when you actually can show that you're going to be hiring an assistant roadmaster and hiring an additional person, and what that's going to cost as you go forward in your years. It's not, you're not just sitting there saying, oh, let's do this and move, down torpedo full speed ahead. You can see what it's actually going to cost you. And you can do that for all of your budgets where you are, like your manager, like your roadmaster, and your insurances, things that you really need to understand what the economy and inflation is going to do to your projections. But getting there, here you can see that you are at 98 and 223, but you're in at 98 and 251, but you can see what happens as you go forward, and it's all projected out, so it makes it easy for you to make decisions as you move forward for what you do this year and what it does for the future. Warren has this document, and he can show you, say, look, let's look at doing this. He can show you what's going to cost and project it out.
Paul,
Any questions?
what is the average cost of living increase for all of the employees aside from Warren? Because Warren's was projected to be 7%. What's everyone else getting?
I don't think it was 7%.
It wasn't 7%.
We projected 0.3 across the board. And again, these are just numbers.
0.3?
3%.
Yeah.
3%. So again, we're just plugging these numbers in to show you what the numbers are going to look like. The board says.
Here's the problem. Warren had a 9-month increase in his salary. So the projected year end is 120, but his actual salary is 125. So we're projecting 128,750 next year. That's the problem you see here. You started the year with a down market of 90, you adjusted his salary. It's not going to be 125 that you're paying, it's going to be 120 year end. He's only got a 3% increase for next year's salary.
Yeah, these are all just placeholders. These are the placeholders for the board to decide what type of increase they want to give across all employees.
And if anybody's curious, here we have a salary survey.
Yeah. And also the salary survey is similar to what we have in corporate America. It's just you have to take into consideration the extent of responsibility. If you have 3 people or 30 people maybe on the same job, so some people will be making more money because they have a larger group of a larger responsibility. Also, I see they do factor in the years of experience. But
And
again,
the size of the municipality too.
or size.
Yes, Valerie, if you want to look at this, here's an actual salary survey.
And that's, we about that ago. I did come across something that Warren didn't get a chance to run by up to now. We adopted the ordinance in 2017-189, and it was the intergovernmental cost sharing and cooperation agreement with Honeybrook Borough for the administering of the MS4 permit requirements for the Upper West Branch. Brandywine Creek watershed, that's quite a title for that one. Have you come across that?
So we do cost share with the
Yeah.
borough, with MS4, so they, they'll either get a bill or we'll get a bill and we'll cross.
You know, the agreement was an 80-20 share, we get the 20% share. But in here it said that the agreement ended on March 9, 2023. Did we extend that?
I don't know, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I see.
The other thing that's not reflected on that salary survey is I believe Warren is not taking health benefits, which would cost us about $25,000 a year,
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Conservatively,
Yeah, conservative. I have a family of 4, so it's probably more like 35,000.
Yeah, so actually, I covered my family of 4, and it's about 33,000. That's why
you go.
Yep. So. Any questions of Paul or?
I would encourage you to take the document. You can email me, you can talk with Warren. The great part about this is it is October 4th. So you have almost 3 full months to play with this document. And it's all on Excel, so whatever you do, we can look and see how we're adjusting, making projections, where we're figuring things out, and you can see what it does with your budget, and it's a very fluid document. So this isn't one of those things where you have a PDF that says, here's your $4 billion budget. You can play around with it. And again, you can see what happens 4 years past today, or past next year, with the decisions you're making for next year's budget.
I think this is a great tool that we can use to look at what's going on down the road. That always, concerned me because we didn't have this before. Last year was our first year. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
very
Warren and I
cool.
discussed that in December of 2021, that we needed to put that 5-year projection in there. And then I'm glad that he was able to work this out. But, we did discuss this last year on the fact that it's a planning tool that most municipalities have been using.
You would be shocked at how many municipalities have a $20 million budget and don't have a 20.
Yeah. Because Scott Pearsall has been giving those budget presentations at PSATs for years. I think you're familiar with Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he's very helpful in, through the region, providing us with some guidance. Of course, he's retired, but still attends PSATs.
So John,
There you go.
what would be helpful on this is to see the median household income as well as the population, because, some of these other townships on here, like Kennett Township, guarantee their median household income is a lot higher than Huntingburg.
Yeah.
So, that has to be taken into consideration too, not just the
And
size of the township.
when you do a survey, when you look at it, it's coming from different sources. And when you take blending in the entire state, it's blown out and the same factors. Yeah, right, Paul, we're looking at the same thing, but we're coming up with so many different projections of where salaries should be for local government. You're trying to find that reliable.
I'd like to see that, please.
I would just say that the four county regions around Philadelphia,
Yes.
you're
I thought you were
in
done,
shape.
we're laying down.
Yeah, Chester County is the most expensive county to live in, is that correct?
That is correct.
Excuse me. So you're right.
Back today, we had a meeting with the Chester County Commissioners, and one of the young men who was attending, he was about 25, he said, I would love to live in Chester County. He said, I just can't afford it. And, we're seeing homes now selling more than half a million, going up to $750,000.
You say a family of four needs $110,000 to be able to even move in, and that's
Yeah.
not home ownership, that's renting.
So you're also going to be fluid in your median income because of the housing that you're building. And
Yeah.
it is a stratosphere above the median that you were in 2010. And so you're going to be watching your median income change between now and 2030, probably fairly substantially.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah.
I mean, is that benefits?
Well, that goes back to the argument of having a land preservation program. When we have more land to preserve in agriculture use as opposed to development, but we do have a requirement that we do have to provide X amount of housing, share across the state.
Well, I think having a dynamic income structure across the board for your township is very strong for your township. If everybody's high income, then you are really susceptible to a recession. If everybody's low income, then you're stagnant where you are. Having a dynamic income base helps your community, and it helps your stabilization of your real estate values.
I have a question regarding the project to resurface the tennis courts down there.
You're welcome.
That's good.
Yeah, so that's like a $350,000 project. Are there, I know I was online looking, like there's DCNR grants available for that type of a project. Are we not seeking those out?
So we currently have a DCNR grant for phase one, so we have to complete that first.
Right, so why wouldn't we complete that and then look to apply for another grant?
The township can do whatever it wants.
I'm just saying, it doesn't really make sense to pay for that when there's grants available. Why don't we get the skate park done and then apply for a grant to do?
Because we're always going to be applying for grants, because there's always upgrades we can do All through the township,
Well,
stormwater.
why would we
parks.
pay for something that we could get a grant for?
To your point that we should be looking ahead for additional grant money, and rather than wait until it's complete and then move, if I heard you correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
That's your budget structure.
Yeah.
Why
That
would-
is exactly your budget structure. So that's the decision, we showed you there's a $300,000 hole right now you gotta fill. One of them could be, if you don't do $300,000 this year, you do 120, you do 250, get 125 back, and then apply for another grant. And then you add in $200,000 and get 100,000 back. We're just putting the expenses and what revenue you have on the budget, but you can see that's a big red line going all the way across there. So that's the decision the supervisors have to make now, December 31st. That isn't even a final decision because it's a capital budget. You can adjust it in 2024 if you want to, but at least get a spending plan that makes sense.
Just looking at the time factor, do we have any additional comments on what we just heard? So we can wrap up. We do have additional items on the agenda.
I have a quick question
Go ahead.
about the line item for the Public Works Department. You're looking to hire, can you explain to me the structure of the, like, how many employees we have in the Public Works Department now and what you're looking to add?
I think we have
So we have 5, so we're going to promote one of the workers to an assistant and not replace them. So we're not going to hire a new person until our director of public works would eventually retire down the line. So we're not looking at, we're promoting someone and then not replacing them, but we'll be doing the same
So
job.
what does that mean? They're really not full-time employees?
No, they're all full-time. We just have a director and 4 other employees. So next year, we're going to have a director and an assistant because our director is planning to retire in a few years. So we need to transfer that knowledge to an assistant, who hopefully would then take over the director position when they retire.
So it's a full-time employee that's
Correct.
getting
That's gonna get a
promoted to be an
promotion.
assistant. And
Correct.
how much is, more is he getting for?
$5,000.
And there's 5 full-time
Yes.
employees currently.
Correct.
We didn't hire any part-time this past year.
So we had the authorization to bring on another full-time member as of January. We actually didn't bring a full-timer on until about 8 weeks ago. So we're already under budget because we went most of the year without hiring them.
Isn't the plan that Don Johnson's gonna retire too?
Well, he's
We've all
been here
retired
for
someday, so
40
yes,
years.
he's looking, yeah, we just don't know when he's gonna retire, so that's the reason why we're trying to make an assistant, so the knowledge transfer can occur, so when Don decides to retire, he'll already have someone that has all of that knowledge to start doing the director's position.
So if I could add,
Yes, go ahead,
you
Paul.
know, we like to index where we are in terms of median household, what taxes, so on. 5 employees in the public works department, the number of miles of road you have, that a lot of those have surface drainage on them, not storm sewers. You're probably running light in your public works department. And that may play its way out as you get into 27, 28, 29. You've got a lot of miles of road, and it takes, now most of those roads are fairly new. You've got some new highways, new roads coming into developments. That's a light number of public works employees to maintain the miles of road that you have. They're doing a good job, but I think as you move forward, I just want to plant the seed, you may need to hire additional personnel as you move forward too.
All right, thank you, Paul. What I'll just do is one last call for any further comments. Yes, go ahead.
So just an FYI, the median household income for Honeybrook is $70,000. Kennett Square is $125,000, and West Hampton is $69,000. Just go for that.
Thank you.
Just go up.
Anyone else on the side of the room? We good? Over here? We don't have anybody that's on.
There's Richard Gibbs on.
You still on, Rich? The final word? All right, thank you. All right, let's proceed. Item 2.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank you all.
Be in touch. When's the last time you see them in the next 3 months?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Paul.
Item 2, review agenda for October 11, 2023 regular meeting.
So we have our normal consent agenda. 4 items for new business. The first one is to pay the bills as prepared by the treasurer. So that's our standard one. Number 2 is what kind of Paul hit about, is that the fire chief of Brook approached me last week and was indicating that his current vehicle, response vehicle, is all but near its end of life. I asked him to get me a CoStar's quote. Just as I said before, we're looking at making nearly $200,000 in interest in the general funds. I think that we need to materially support our firefighters and especially the chief, ensuring that he gets there. So he came back with a quote for a 2023 Tahoe that is available and on-site. That MSRP was, bear with me 1 second. All in, it was $54,274,000. The CoStar's discount would give a $5,775,000 discount, bringing the total off the lot price to $48,500. I believe the township should authorize a donation, as we noted, in the general fund to pay for this vehicle, to get it in service as quickly as possible. If the board approves it next week, then we would make that budget adjustment at the end of the year to show for that. I don't know if the board has any questions, concerns with the fire department.
Who's the chief now?
So it's current.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So again, I talked to them a little bit about it. It's getting to the point where they're spending thousands of dollars a year maintaining their existing vehicle. Obviously, I think they should be putting that thousands of dollars back into equipment and not into the current vehicle that's on its last leg. So I would ask the board to approve it. If we can do that, they should pick it up and probably get it in service by the end of the year.
Is there any kind of conversation for new equipment that we're
So they have that purchase, as you saw in the capital reserve fire. They have a ladder, or I'm sorry, they have a pumper coming up in 2025 that we're giving the $380,000, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's like an $880,000 vehicle purchase. So that's the next large purchase they're doing. I don't know about their officer line vehicles for their responses. This just kind of came up in a conversation where he was struggling, and I offered to see if the township would be willing to maybe step up. Because again, fire service protection is on the municipality. So
I don't know if Chief Perry will be approaching us, but I did have a conversation with Barry Janssen, who said that as far as the additional truck, that would be another conversation coming up. So just a heads up until they approach us on that.
yeah, and again, as things change, they might be coming back for more funds. And again, obviously, we decide how we're going to fund that. Currently, we have a 0.5 million rate for fire. We by law can go up to 3. So we're at 0.5, we can go up to 3 mils for fire protection.
Yeah.
So generally, that's how we fund our donations and support the fire. So if they need more money down the line, we'd be looking at the village increase of fire services. Number 3 is a lot add-on. They went through PC, they recommended it. They're going to be adding 42.11 acres to 413 September roads. City enforcement officer and the health department, I believe we're going to give waivers. And then the last thing is to authorize resolution 12/20/23. We currently use the Chester County Treasurer's Office to collect real estate township tax. We would need to sign a new resolution. They are increasing their fees. Their out-of-pocket expenses aren't covering it. So they're going to increase their fees to a $4 per each tax bill with a $2 per reminder notice. I don't have the current costs. So we would need to get a new resolution by November if we wish to have them continue to collect our property tax, which I would recommend. In the past, it had been an open-ended agreement with no termination date. They're not going to have termination date, so they can
from the board? All right, we don't have any items under other business, so open forum. Anything on this side of the room? Anything on this side of the room? That's a simple question. Go ahead.
Just a question about the fire, Portland Fire Department and all that, but does the borough also like chip in to help pay for the vehicles, or is it just on the township to buy, to get the vehicles?
We're working together, the two municipalities.
Okay.
There's also, Huntingburg Township does contribute to the Twin Valley Fire Department as well. Rich, anything from you?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Looks like we are able to wind things down at this point. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you everyone for joining tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, good night. Just for information, we do have the Western Chester County Council of Government will be meeting here on Wednesday, October 25th. The meeting starts officially at 7 o'clock. There will be a committee, an EAC committee meeting at 6:45. And let's see what else we have here. Oh, yes, and how can I forget, November 5th at Telehigh at 2 o'clock, there will be a veteran ceremony. So that'll be an hour-long ceremony. We used to do it here, and Mr. Steelson back there is one person that has been with us for years on that. Thank you for supporting the veterans in our community. Telehigh has been gracious in hosting, and it has grown into a tremendous event. So we appreciate the hospitality and hosting by Telehigh for that event. Anything else from the board? Okay. And I did attend the Western Chester County Chamber of Commerce meeting this morning, and it was on regional planning. So they are very much interested in learning about COGS, and that hit them. Also, I met at 11 o'clock with the Chester County Commissioners. It's the executive board meeting with the supervisors. Interesting, one of the conversations was on the cost of that search for the prisoner. And right now, the municipalities are paying for the overtime. There's no relief. So one municipality incurred something like $25,000 in overtime. So that's, and fire companies also stepped in. So that was a significant, right now it's being taken as volunteer time.
I just had an interaction with the Chester County Sheriff's Office. We
Good.
normally have 71 people in the Sheriff's Office, and now they're down to something like 13 or 15.
Yeah.
Can't hire enough people.
We're in sour milk.
Thanks everyone for coming out.
Good evening, everyone, yes. Okay.
You have to sign some plans across.
Got it.
So you do realize that the median household income difference between Kennett Square and Huntingburg is about a 50% difference, but the salary of the manager is only about 20% difference. So that means that our median household
You said that we're now
income
having a conversation.
is only about
Based on the
$70,000.
basis.
So you wanna have an argument about this, this is where.
We don't have to be surprised.
It's just a.
Yeah.
I did mention we go forward.
Bye. I think that's.
We're